Welcome to the VGC Podcast. My name is Christopher Knowles, and today we are answering more TikTok comments. You guys put so many questions in the comments, so I thought it was best to kind of implement them into this podcast and answer them to the best of my ability and give you guys the most detail so you guys can take the information, use it, apply it to your game, and improve very quickly and very rapidly. As always, if you have a friend or a teammate that you think can really benefit from a show like this that talks about volleyball and how to improve your abilities and skills, then definitely share the show with them. Share it with a coach, a teammate, whoever you think really needs to hear it and benefit from it so we can all grow together and improve our skills as a whole. So, as always, we always dive straight in. No questions, no ands, no ifs, no buts, just answering TikTok comments on the podcast episode today. So, jumping straight in, the first question is how to avoid landing on one leg after spiking. So I read this and I was trying to think of the only times that I've ever landed on one leg after I've hit. And the only times that's ever happened is when I hit off balance. So essentially, if you truly look at it, when you're balanced and you're going up and you're hitting, you land on both feet every single time because you're balanced, you're going up and you're coming straight back down essentially with a little bit of forward movement, right, after our approach. So if you're constantly landing on the left leg, then the right leg again, the left, and then the right, and then the left, and then the left again, then that means that you are really off balanced and you need to work on your body control when you're hitting, right? This is something that I'm kind of not developing a bad habit around, but I've seen a lot of this in my game recently as well, so I totally get what you're going through. I felt that before, and I feel that a couple times today, but essentially what it means is you're off balance and you're not truly getting under the ball and jumping straight up to where you can hit and control yourself and control your momentum to land on both legs, right? If you land on one leg occasionally, like every 20-ish hits, then you're totally good. That's totally natural. It's based off the situation. But if every single time, close to every single time you hit a ball, you're landing on one leg, then you're more than likely off balance, right? If you're falling backwards, falling to the side, falling to the right, left, forward, whatever it might be. So making sure that you have enough body control and you're not approaching too wild, that's knocking your approach off balance, and making sure that you're getting under the ball where it's peaking so that you can jump straight up and then choose your shot from there, rather than getting it caught of it's going too far over your hitting shoulder or it's too far inside or too far behind you. Making sure you're really keeping your eye on the ball and making sure you're staying a little bit behind it, but also keeping it in front of you, but not too far in front of you to where you have to hit it with like your arm straight out and you don't want to hit it with your arm behind you. So if you're landing on one leg, you're off balance. Way to work on that is making sure your approach isn't too wild, that it's not knocking you out of balance when you go to approach, but then also making sure you're catching the ball at its peak of where it's going up, and then it stops and it's coming back down. Where it stops and at its peak is where you should be going into your step close super aggressively and jumping up and making sure that you're keeping it on your hitting shoulder. And something that I learned in club was like keeping it in your wheelhouse. So for me, I'm left-handed, so if I ever had to like hit the ball across my body, right, and I hit it on my right shoulder, then that's outside my wheelhouse. And if I have to hit it sideways and it's super far away from my left shoulder, then that's outside my wheelhouse as well. So where we really want to keep it is on our hitting shoulder, to where if we do a full circle with our arm, the ball should always be being contacted at that point, and the only thing that changes where the ball goes is our hand and our wrist and how we contact the ball. But make sure you're not landing on one leg too often, and if you are, make sure you're being a lot more balanced, gaining a lot more body control and jumping up instead of not watching the ball and making the same approach every single time. Making sure you're making a new approach with every single set you get and being intentional with those approaches of how you're getting there, how aggressive you are, making sure you're not throwing yourself off balance and everything like that. How do I use more hip rotation while hitting instead of using my back to gain power in my swing? Because sometimes my back hurts when I hit. So I'm assuming it's your lower back because I have done this before where you just play so much and then your lower back is absolutely like throbbing. But I talked about this on the last week's podcast, but I'll get a little bit more in depth on it. So, how do you use more hip rotation? It's essentially the same thing is if you're trying to do it while you're hitting, like I talked about last week, of trying to get up and then open up and separate your chest and your shoulders from your hips, and it's not really working, you haven't really developed that mind to body connection yet, then something I would definitely start doing is maybe in the gym or getting a band or anything like that, just working on standing straight, having your hips and feet and everything in line like you're just standing normally, and then twisting as far back as you possibly can while keeping your hips and legs forward, right? So essentially you want your legs and your hips to stay straight and only your upper body and torso are twisting back, right? So the more you can develop that connection of, okay, this is what it's supposed to feel like, and do that over and over and over and over and over, and then apply that to your actual hitting, then it'll be a lot easier than trying to just go and change how you swing entirely off the bat without even knowing how it truly is supposed to feel like when you're using your torque and opening up. So I would definitely say, like, base level, if you want to work on it from the bottom to the top, is just standing straight up and then twisting back with only your core and chest and shoulders and back, and utilizing that torque you have while keeping your hips and legs forward. A way you can kind of make that a little bit more difficult is by adding a cable or a band. So you're standing straight and you have your hitting arm out holding the band or the cable, and then you turn back with your arm, right? Kind of like pulling it back with that hitting arm and getting your elbow as far back as you possibly can, and then that's going to force you to twist back. But then also, again, making sure your hips and legs are straight. That's how you kind of do it a little bit more of a workout style. But just always focusing on keeping the bottom half straight and the top half twisting and turning by itself, making sure we're separating our torso from our hips, right? Rather than trying to do it in mid-air like we're hitting, like I said. So either do it standing straight up, keeping your hips and legs forward, or add a cable or a band and pull that cable and band as far back as you possibly can and twisting while keeping your hips and legs straight. Another way you can do that is, if it's a little bit physically harder, if you're trying to stand up, you can do it on one knee. So if you're left-handed, you're grabbing the cable or the band with your left hand, and your right knee is up in 90 degree on the floor, and your foot's on the floor with your right foot, and your left one is kind of just like basically you're on your left knee in a lunge position, and then doing the same thing and opening up. And then if your right hand is the same thing, left foot is up, right hand's grabbing the cable, and you're turning and opening up as much as you can. So essentially, if you want to use more hip rotation while you're hitting instead of using your back to gain power and like folding backwards, just make sure that you work on disconnecting your hips from your upper torso and your shoulders and your chest, and utilizing that torque you have with off the court work of just getting in the motion of disconnecting the two and being able to build that strength in twisting backwards. How to improve hitting timing. So I think with hitting timing, this is a big thing that a lot of players are having issues with, but I think the one drill that I think is super beneficial for something like this is having a coach or someone, setter or whatever, in the setter position, and then you're on the outside or the middle or the right or whatever position you play, and then they are tossing up a nice high, like a nice high set, but it's not really a set, they're just tossing it, right? So they're initiating a nice high ball, and then you're going to go up and make your approach and catch the ball at its peak above your head, right? And then if you record this, or if you have someone giving you feedback on it, it can really expose a lot of your timing problems, right? So when you do this drill, if you make the approach and they initiate the ball and get it super high, right? And then you want to make your full normal approach like you always do, get up and catch it instead of hitting it. You want to catch it high in front of your head instead of behind you or too far out in front of you like you're catching a football. You want to keep it nice and high like where we always want to be contacting the ball. And then that, I think, will really expose a lot of the weaker parts of your approach or hitting. So if you make a video of it and you pause it where you're catching it at the moment you're catching it and you're kind of leaning backwards, that means that you're overrunning the ball, right? If you're catching it on your way down, you'll be able to see that as well. And that means that you're going too early, right? It could also be that you're going too late and you're catching the ball super far out in front of you, right? And so I think kind of taking a couple steps back instead of trying to fix your timing of just off perfect sets every single time and actually hitting it, breaking it down and taking a couple steps back and actually trying to catch it instead really exposes and shows you the different parts of your approach and hitting and everything that goes into your spike form of what is needing to be worked on, what needs to be improved, what's the weaker part of it, and where are the areas you can enhance to get better at approaching and hitting and doing it all together, right? So I think you can either record yourself or get feedback from the person who's tossing it, but you always want to be making your full approach and catching that ball on your way up or at your jump peak and catching it on top of your head and a little bit in front of you, kind of like catching it on your forehead a lot higher at your highest reach, instead of catching it behind you, catching it in front of you. That can tell you if you're underrunning it or overrunning it, making sure you're catching it on your way up and not on your way down. If you're catching it on your way down, that means you're too early. And then that can help you with the timing aspect, making sure you're not catching it to the side of you or to the right or the left of you. That means you're not keeping your eye on the ball and locating where the set is going. This drill can expose so many different things, but I think being able to take those couple steps back of, okay, let's take out the hitting aspect and just focus on the hitting and the approach and the work up to the actual contact by catching it instead of hitting it, can really showcase and put kind of on a pedestal the things that you need to work on and the things that can really be improved as a whole in your approach and hitting and everything like that. That is the VGC podcast episode for this week. If you enjoyed this episode and you really found a lot of beneficial information from it and got a lot of value from it, definitely share it with a teammate. Share it with your whole team if you want, so you can all grow together, because volleyball is definitely a team sport, and the more you guys can learn and grow together, the better your team will perform. So share the show with them. If you have any questions, DM us on Instagram or email us at volleyballgrowthcoach@gmail.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. And I will see you guys in the next episode, because it is always better to grow together.